views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Good evening and welcome to the Bronx Buzz. We have a great show for you this evening. You may or may not know that this is BronxNet's program where we talk to journalists and editors and writers and photographers, filmmakers, videographers, anybody involved in putting stuff out in the borough of the Bronx. And this evening we are thrilled because we have one of the writers and editors of City and State New York, and he's going to join us in a second. And then the second half, you might have heard that the Daily News is losing its newsroom, which is kind of a revolution in daily newspapers and in journalism. And we'll have a segment about that as well. But let's get started with our friend from City and State New York. It's Jeff Coltin. Nice to have you with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on again.
Jeff, let's talk a little bit about this issue. Now, this issue, which has Jamal Bowman on the front, really celebrated his victory, much like AOC's was celebrated previously. But maybe more importantly, it's the Bronx issue. Talk to me about the issues that you guys do for each borough and what the purpose is, and a little background, and then we'll get into the weeds, so to speak.
Yeah, sure thing. We're a weekly political magazine, and we cover, local politics in the New York City and the New York State, so the state legislature. And my particular focus is usually on the de Blasio administration and the city council. And with City and State, we have done a bunch of regional issues. We do an annual focus on each borough, and then also, Long Island and Westchester County. But this past week, we did our annual Bronx issue.
Yeah. Where
we had a power list of all the political power players in the Bronx and various stories looking at, the just politics and the different power bases in the Bronx. And of course, a focus on 10 coronavirus heroes, people that really stepped up over the last 5 or 6 months during this pandemic.
I will just say straight out, congratulations to my friend and colleague and my boss, Executive Director Michael Max Nabi. He and I were both selected to be in there. And it really is an honor. Before we leave that, I'm just curious, who does it? How do you come up with this? And I'm not only worried about me or the Bronx, we're always worried about the Bronx, but you really do it for a lot of different things. The most powerful under 40, the most powerful over 40. How do you go about doing it? I think it's an ingenious device to help you build audience, obviously, but also let people know what's going on. So just give me a little background about it.
Yeah, definitely. We have an editorial team that is very plugged into local politics, both in the Bronx and just New York City generally. So, we draw from our own knowledge, but more importantly, we talk to a lot of sources, a lot of people that really deeply know Bronx politics, and, ask their opinion, check it out, make sure that we're, we want this list to be respected and accurate. So we do have to check in with the experts. And, we always say, particularly, do you think Gary should be going up or down this year?
Did he have a good year? I guess. I don't know. I've been doing this for long enough. It seems all the same. You and I were talking beforehand about the Bronx and Bronx politics. There really is a big shift. I mean, if you look at what the congressional delegation potentially is going to be, I mean, we don't presume anything, but certainly the numbers always show that the Democratic candidates seem to get elected. We currently don't have a Republican elected official in the Bronx of any sort. So, it's likely that's the way it's going to go. We've got 3 out of the 4 congressional representatives potentially will be new. As I mentioned to you earlier on Bronx Talk, we did a show with the 3 Democratic candidates for Assembly, which are new. You guys identified it. I thought it was very interesting, saying that there's not only maybe a leftward shift, but a female shift. I love the sneaker thing. That works very well. So talk to me about your perception of the direction of Bronx politics at this particular juncture.
Yeah, so for better or for worse, local Bronx politics has had a reputation for a long time of being a boys' club. Uh, this is, to be fair, true of politics in most places forever. but
Right.
but particularly, I think local politics in the Bronx has resisted the influx of powerful women that we've seen in some of the other boroughs. There hasn't ever been a female borough president. There have been few female members of Congress. In fact, as I think about it, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez may be the first female member of Congress to represent the Bronx. I might be mistaken.
I'll have to think about that. I'm not aware of one off the top. Of Nydia Velasquez, not directly in the Bronx, but
culturally,
culturally and has associations in the Bronx.
Yeah. So there's that. There's always been a lack of women in the Bronx, especially when you get to the hyper-local stuff, when we're talking about the Bronx Democratic County Committee. And a lot of politicians are now trying to break down those barriers and change that. We see Alessandra Biaggi, who not only is a state senator, but also does get involved in hyper-local politics. AOC, of course. And we have some female candidates that are also now taking seats in the assembly, and even some...
I'll call it out, potentially taking seats. I might end up doing debates in these, so I never want to prejudge, but Chantel Jackson in the 79th would succeed Michael Blake. Amanda Septimo technically would succeed Carmen Arroyo. And I'll just list off the top of my head, Carinas Reyes, who is currently an assembly member, LaToya Joyner, an assembly member, Natalia Fernandez, an assembly member. There is a shift. I want to even talk about it on a national level. And I'm not as familiar, obviously, with other cities, but when I look at mayors like the mayor of Atlanta, the mayor of Baltimore, all of a sudden I'm seeing women, and frankly, women of color in those positions. You'd have to be blind, frankly, to think that there is not a shift in American politics right now. You only need to know who the Democratic nominee for vice president is.
Of course, and
we're on to something here, right?
Yeah, as I was watching the DNC a couple nights ago with Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser. She's a very impressive speaker and somebody who has grown somewhat of a national profile even beyond the borders there. And, we're actually, I guess we're seeing that in the Bronx too, of course. I mean, AOC, a Bronxite, spoke at the DNC. And also, as I mentioned before, State Senator Alessandra Biaggi just got some national attention for being a partner or a signer on of a lawsuit against President Donald Trump and the Postal Service, trying to make sure that the election goes on fairly and normally in November.
Right. What do you think now? By the way, the person you depicted here, Vanessa Gibson, she's going to be on Bronx Talk this week. She had a very interesting interview in the Times about policing, and it's a little bit different what some people might gauge. But what do you think that means for I'm always interested not in the politics of it, but in what are the results? Does it mean more emphasis on healthcare? Does it? I mean, I don't want to again prejudge it. But my sense is a better understanding of family. Maybe I'd like to think a better understanding of neighborhoods. What do you think? I mean, is it going to mean a shift in terms of legislation?
I mean, I can point specifically to Assemblywoman Carinas Reyes,
yes,
who we mentioned before. She actually just today had a press conference in Manhattan, joining with Queens State Senator Michael Gianaris, standing up for union members, saying that they still are not getting enough protections in regards to COVID-19. And
yes,
they want to have new legislation that would basically hold employers more accountable in these situations.
Yeah. And she was a nurse, so she could, presumably a union member, and she could talk about that firsthand. I think that's the kind of thing we're going to get a better sense about. Before we run out of time, I do want to, you and I talked about it before the show, Chantel Jackson wrote a very interesting press release upset about how the last Bronx County Democratic Committee selection process for judges went, without getting into every detail. But it also signaled to me a new look, a little bit of dissatisfaction at the status quo. Your thoughts about that?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, the fact that so many of these new candidates are women is something, but also the fact is a lot of these candidates came in without the support of the Bronx County Democratic Party. Chantel Jackson is one of them. Her opponent, Cynthia Cox, got the support of the party. So Chantel Jackson came in, and yeah, her first big public statement was basically saying that the insider politics of picking judges, Bronx County's power of picking judges is whack. So very interesting, coming right out the gate, attacking county politics as usual. So definitely going to keep my eye on her in the coming weeks. And also same for Amanda Septimo, another soon-to-be assembly member who is coming in without the support of the Bronx County organization. And I think she's not afraid to criticize them.
There's no question about that. And I mentioned to you also on Bronx Talk, we did a show with the three of them. And I thought there were new ideas on taking a look at communities and all those things. Those were very helpful. But just going back to the selection of Andy Cohen potentially as a judge, of course, there is an election ahead of him. That will open the door for, and there's already at least 5 candidates ready to run for that seat in the District 11. And that seat had always been held. June Island, speaking of women, that was a woman elected official in the Bronx. June Island, and then Oliver Capel, well-entrenched politicians. Andy Cohen maybe a little less so, but he'd been there now, I guess, in his 8th year. And there's a whole array of new candidates. A lot of criticism of Assemblyman Dinowitz for trying to push his son. But the way I see it, there's going to be a race. And whether, one of the things is, yes, he's the Assemblyman's son, but there's so many other candidates who, my judgment is, they're well qualified.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, we've seen this across the entire city, is just more people running for seats than in the past, more people who are eager to run for something. We're very much seeing that in the Bronx. We're going to see a special election, yes, for Andy Cohen's seat. We're also going to see a special election for Richie Torres's city council seat because he's been elected to Congress. So this change that we're talking about in the Bronx, it's very much going to continue. New borough president next year, everything.
And part of that, we have to say is due to term limits in the city council, because Vanessa Gibson, I mean, of course, she has suggested pretty strongly that she wants to run for borough president. Fernando Cabrera said the same thing. Those are 2 more city council seats that are going to be open. And judging from the way things are, there's going to be a lot of grassroots people. I mean, I better get more boxes on my Zoom ready to go, because I think that, we're going to be very, very busy, and it signals change. It'll be very interesting to see how it works.
That's right. I have to admit, for the past couple of years, Queens has been the hot spot for politics in New York City. I think that's changing. I think now the Bronx is the place to watch for any serious political junkies in the city.
And then let's certainly give credit. We mentioned Michael Maxnabi. I mean, he's completely passionate about us providing voter literacy and voter information. And that's why we do all the debates that we do. So we're going to be pretty much in the center of it. Jeff, thanks for covering the Bronx. We didn't even get to talk about Jamal Bowman. We'll save that for the next time we're here.
Another fascinating newcomer. Yes. Well,
yes.
Gary, thanks always for having me. And I'll come on another time to talk about Jamal Bowman, Jamal Bailey, all the Jamals.
Oh, my God. There you go. So City and State New York, folks, if you don't get their newsletter every day, you're really missing something. And Jeff Coltin and all my friends over there do a great job. We'll see you around town. Thanks so much for buzzing with us this evening.
Thanks a lot.
Folks, we're going to take a break, and now we're going to we'll talk about change. The Daily News is getting rid of, or maybe already gotten rid of, its newsroom. Striking. Unbelievable. We'll do that right after this.
We know that people are dealing with the health crisis, but there's also a lot of food insecurity.
We're giving out healthy food options, and that's what's key here.
If you're a senior, you have a disability, they'll actually deliver meals to you.
The residents are anxious, they're worried, they're scared, they want to be tested.
When things were happening in our community and we couldn't get the help.
There's almost a presumption
of criminality that attaches to your skin color.
The site will prioritize those who are at highest risk in the population.
If you feel symptoms and you'd like to visit one of these COVID-19 testing sites here in the Bronx, you may call the State Health Department's hotline.
Important to note about this site is no reservations are needed. This is a walk-in clinic.
A lot of us are out of work and looking for something to do.
We have the machinery and the skills to make large scales of these masks and gowns.
Take care of your people. It's going to go way further than we actually can understand.
Right now, employees like myself are just adjusting to the new reality.
Reporting from Bronxnet, this is Tran.
We built a media network for you.
BronxNet TV.
Come learn in your new state-of-the-art studios at Lehman College.
At Mercy College.
And coming soon to the South Bronx in the Hub.
Inspire with your stories, culture, history.
Your Bronx on BronxNet.
Engage with us.
Connect with us at your channels and at bronxnet.tv.
Learn, engage, inspire. BronxNet TV.
From the Bronx
to the world.
BronxNet.
Welcome back to the Bronx Buzz. We thank our friend Jeff Coltin from City and State New York. But now we turn our attention to my longtime friend Bob Kappstatter. We know him as Cappy, who is, let's see, former bureau chief at the Daily News, former this, that, and the other. He's been in journalism and photography for many, many years. Nice to see you, Bob Kappstatter. How are you?
Hello, Gary. Once again, I'm still waiting for the check from those last 20 shows.
Oh, those are in the mail, but you know.
Okay, all right. Well, the mail. Well, we have all right.
Yeah, you know what's going on. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
As you know, the reason we reached out to you was because the Daily News is closing or has closed its.
Well, yeah, they say it's maybe temporary. I don't know. I don't know.
Have you talked to anybody, any of your friends or colleagues over there?
Well, you know, we have a special group site on Facebook. So there was a ton of chatter. Everybody was clamoring for dibs on the newsroom clock, that old
apparently there's that big clock that gives you the time.
Yeah, that horrible clock that would be breathing down your neck on deadline.
Give me a little background for the people who don't know. You had been at the Daily News for many years. Talk about your career at the Daily News.
Oh, Lord. Well, I walked into that front page newsroom in 1968. And boy, it was the front page. Characters like right out of that Broadway show, the front page. Guys with nicknames like Stitch and Louis the Ear, you name it. And
that's old style journalism. That's when journalism.
It was rock'em sock'em. I mean, the city desk had stethoscopes and subpoenas in the desk if you're trying to sneak into a hospital. You know, we had all that. We had a phone booth, a glass booth in the back of the newsroom with a direct line to the switchboard. It was a soundproof booth, so you could go in that booth and pretend you were a police lieutenant or a doctor or anybody looking for information on the victim. And the phone line would be direct to the switchboard. They would know if that person was calling the news back, that it was your call you were waiting for.
So the elimination...
It was rock and roll journalism back then. Yeah.
The elimination of that newsroom, you and I had a brief discussion about it, is significant because you would feed off the guy or woman at the next desk, right? There was interaction. It was
that's what, let's talk a little bit about that, because you had these wonderful minds, these people who were, some of them were high school dropouts who had cops in their pocket. Some of them were Yale graduates.
You say cops in their pocket?
Well, not in that sense, but, you know, who had great sources among the cops. We had a Yale graduate. He was the dean of the Rewrite Bank, Henry Lee, a great old white-haired guy, almost looked like Santa Claus without a beard. And Henry, in my book, wrote one of the greatest leads. No, not the lead, but he was doing the daily roundup story when Fidel Castro came to visit the United Nations. So Castro goes to visit the New York Times that day.
Mm-hmm.
So that night in Henry's story, maybe about the 8th or 10th paragraph, Henry wrote, Dr. Castro also visited the New York Times, a West Side English language newspaper. But that's the kind of thing that thrived in that newsroom. You were always striving for the great lead. You were always, you know, if you were trying and doing an investigative story, everybody said, did you try this guy? Or let's go after that guy. Work my source. Here's some of my sources. I mean, it was a coalition of minds.
And so, you know, the Daily News, which, frankly, I'm going to be honest about, was a cutting-edge newspaper, had incredible investigations, incredible reporting. We're going to talk about one of the great columnists who, Pete Hamill, who passed away. But nowadays, everybody's working online. We know that. And then all of a sudden, the powers that be said, hey, you know what? Why are we spending for it? Do you think that will be lost? And do you think that will
very much so?
And it will contribute to kind of an isolationism thing. I mean, I don't know how to measure.
Of course. I mean, you know, what am I going to do? You know, it's talk to my dog. So, what do you think about this lead, Petey?
I don't want him to start barking. We're doing TV here.
There you go.
Dogs.
No, I don't know, but seriously, I mean, the camaraderie and just the sparks, the electricity that surged in this room. And, you know, when you had a major story break, I mean, the electricity just surged in that room. Everybody was responding, coordinating. What happens today if I'm sitting in my apartment here and everybody's scattered out? What do you do? You know, come on, a little coordination here. Are we going to be doing Zoom like this? Give me a break.
Listen, I can't.
Give me a break.
I don't know what to think. But I want to ask you, you mentioned dogs. And I don't know that all the years we've been, you know, on broadcast together, I don't think I ever really asked you about Son of Sam and your coverage of that. You were right in the middle of really one of the legendary crime stories.
Listen, that whole newsroom was in the middle of Son of Sam. Everybody, you know, a lot of us had our favorite suspects. Mine, I had drawings he had done of women being stabbed and slashed and mutilated. And it's just like you were on full alert. It's funny.
No, were you
Stacy Moskowitz was his Sam's final fatal victim, and I was at her funeral, and a police inspector named Carl Ravens I was standing there, and I said, "What do you think what is it going to take to finally get this guy?" And he looked at me and said, "You know, it's going to be something stupid like a traffic ticket or a summons." And boom, a week or two later, they found that his car had they found a summons, his car had gotten a summons at a fire hydrant a block or two away from the shooting happened.
And then that put two
fun story. Yeah, fun story. I was at Sam's arraignment, and I ran into a detective I knew who was one of the first guys in the interrogation room with Sam. So I said, "So what's this guy like?" He looks at me and says, "This guy has got all the personality of a carrot."
or worse, or the grinder that cuts the carrot. But that's another story.
Yeah. Anyway.
I do want to talk about the legendary Pete Hamill.
Yes.
And I think when after he died, we interacted briefly, and you said, you know, we used to, you know, bow down at his coattails. What about Pete Hamill made him? I mean, he died. Folks who may not know, a couple of weeks ago, at the age of 85. a journalist, an author. I mean, they're just one of the great.
Everything, yeah, everything.
Yeah. What made it great to be around him? That's the sense I get. It's not only what he put out, but there was an aura about him. Talk to me about
Well, you just took the word I was going to use. There was an aura about Pete. You know, Pete was just, you know, he was totally approachable, first of all, which was one of his mistakes at the news. I had Pete to a Christmas dinner for the Bronx Bureau. We went to Lucky Chang's, which was a transvestite restaurant. It was a gag thing.
In Manhattan?
And so we go out for a smoke, and he says, Cappy, give me one good piece of advice. I say, Pete, get yourself a wingman, because when you walk into that newsroom, they're going to be coming at you like the night of the dead. You know, Pete, you got a minute? Pete, you got 5 minutes? And I ran into him 6 months later, and he said, Cappy, I didn't do it, and you were so right. I have to come in here on Sundays to get any work really done. So,
wow. Because people wanted to talk to him and had read the stuff he'd written about.
And he would, you know, and he would talk to him. He would always extend himself. And by the way, he was my personal hero. My God, he lived with Shirley MacLaine and he dated Jackie Kennedy. My God,
I don't even know what to say. Just taking a step back for all. And again, I don't even know. Maybe I asked you this when you had left or retired at some point, but. Favorite story, biggest thing that you ever were part of, best thing that you ever wrote, most influential thing?
I told you this a long time ago.
I don't remember. I'm sorry.
All right, well, I know. I'm in one ear and out the other for me, too. No, you know what? The best story I ever did was the one I just did and the next one that I'll do. That's what I always told myself, and that's what I always told my reporters. Gary, if it was a big story, I was somehow attached to it. You know, it might not have been my byline on a story, but half the newsroom had worked that same story, and maybe 2 or 3 reporters got the byline on the story.
What a great way to summarize this story about what we might lose at the Daily News. There's all that expertise. You miss it? I mean, now we're a few years since you've really been.
Not anymore. Not anymore. The business has changed. I had the golden years. I am so happy I had the golden years.
So you got to cover the city. You made tons of friends. You got to see.
And I walked away with a ton of stories. Listen, do you know how many drinks people can buy me now if they just want to hear a story at a bar?
So wait. So that goes back to your original question about being paid. So that's, although we'd have to.
There you go. Yeah, but listen. Sadly enough, I did a fast Google, and it's like in 2008 there were 71,000 newspaper publishers. 2019, 35,000. Half the newspapers that were here, and half of the reporters.
And you know what I mourn is, and not only the Daily News, the Times used to have a Metro section, and I knew that, and there was even an office for the Times in the Bronx, and you knew those reporters. You and I established a long, communication about the Bronx. And we all lose out. And that's why we do the Bronx Buzz, to talk about these things. Cappy, we got to run. Bob Kappstatter,
as always,
veteran of the Daily News. Bob Kappstatter, stay well, my friend. All the best.
Give my love to Susan.
All right. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Folks, that's it. We will see you next week. This week on the Bronx Buzz, we're going to talk about a changing attitude toward police departments. May not be exactly what you think it is. And so that will be very interesting on Bronx Talk this week. Good night. Keep buzzing.